Hi, this is Tom DeWeese, and I want to welcome you to the first of a series of webinars that the American Policy Center has planned to help teach you how to organize, respond, and fight back to restore your freedoms from right there on your local level. For the next 8 webinars, we're going to teach you how to establish your community as a freedom pod, which can help plant the seeds to grow more freedom pods in the next community and into the next. What we mean by a freedom pod is where we are establishing free enterprise, private property, and individual choices in your life, where we're trying to secure and guarantee those. We believe that if you can focus in your own community and establish that right there, that can grow to the next community and to the next. That's why we're calling it a freedom pod. So let me give you just a quick overview of what we're talking about over these next several webinars. Each one will focus on a specific issue or tactic, such as why it is vital that we organize on the local level and how to take the offensive right there in your local community. You know, the COVID-19 situation has shown us why we need to fight locally. Who is it that has shut down the whole country? Isn't the federal government. It's been your mayors and your governors. They have proven that they have this kind of power, and they're showing the kind of dictatorship that they believe that they hold. This is where you have the best possible chance to affect policy. It's the only place where you can get right into the face of your elected representatives and apply direct pressure. Second thing we want you to understand, we've got to stop being polite. Too many of us just take what is thrown at us and say, well, golly gee, what can I do about it? Go on the attack and be relentless about it. We are going to teach you how to network and start the movement right there in your own community and then build it into an effective fighting force. By the time we're done, you're going to be a citizen ninja. Third, you'll learn how to research, to find their plans and their players, the people that are working behind the scenes, and where the money is coming from to put these policies in place. We will show you how to bring some emotion into your arguments. You know, one of the things we have to do is begin to involve the true victims of these policies and show how they have been hurt. One of the big mistakes that our side makes is to be too intellectual in our approach. We are usually educated in economics and philosophy and history, and it becomes natural for us to start pointing out the fallacy of the left's arguments. But while you're trying to take a long time detailing why their policies simply won't work, they're economically unfeasible, on and on and on, what do? They start crying out, but somebody's got to do something. And then the crowd wakes up and says, yeah, and they start to follow them, and we've lost the debate. We've got to stop doing that, bring some of the victims into our arguments and some of the emotions that are there. Quite frankly, that would be one of the left's worst nightmares if we start to do that. And we have the enemies, we have the victims, we have the emotions to share that. Fourth, we'll show you how to deal with the media, whether it's hostile or not. And you'll learn how to make it all personal. We'll show you how you can go on the attack and make these councilmen, your county commissioners, whoever it is, their planners, all these NGOs that are behind this, how they will own their own schemes of destruction. That is how you lay the groundwork for campaigns to throw them out of office. And that must be your main goal for all of the efforts you intend to change things in your own community. Fifth, change the debate. Make it your debate, not theirs. Don't argue what their position is. Make it yours. One of the things you can do is establish a grading system for how your local government is protecting freedom. Review new laws and regulations and rate them on how they protect or diminish your freedom. And using a scale of, say, 1 to 10, review and report on the actions of your city council, your county commission, or your mayor. Be sure to name the sponsors of such legislation and list how each member of the council voted. Make them own their own actions. If it's a bad law, make sure everyone in town knows who's responsible. Put the offending official's name on the plans that they are responsible for. That's what you have to do to begin to organize plans to run your own candidates for office and put these people out of office. And finally, we are going to present to you a 5-bill plan that's designed for state legislators to use to cut the size, cost, reach, and power of government. Put that all together, it's called SCRAP, the size, cost, reach, and power of government. Scrap it. These bills have been provided to me by a well-known state legislator, and we will teach other legislators how to use them, even if they are outnumbered in their legislatures. We're always outnumbered, and so many give up and don't know how to move forward. We're going to show them how they can do that. They can network with other state legislators in other states. The same tactic can be used in your city council and your county commission, by the way. In short, to use the other side's terminology, we are going to flatten the curve of bloated, out-of-control government. That's what all of this is about. Now, we are not going to try to force all of this information on you at one time. That's why we will break these issues and tactics down into specific teaching sessions. And I'm going to be bringing some of the nation's best activists and experts on to help present them. And we have also produced one of the most comprehensive training manuals ever created for local activists to go along with all of the webinar teaching. And I'll tell you all about that in a little bit. Before we start tonight, just this one detail note. We're not going to take questions from you about the webinars for a couple of reasons. One, we want to keep them short and on point. Also, we will probably answer most of your questions during upcoming webinars. However, if you do have questions, we're going to provide you a way to send them to us through the American Policy Center at our website, americanpolicy.org, and we will get to them and we'll get them answered for you. So, the topic for this webinar is Know Your Enemy. If you don't know who you are up against right there in your own local community, then none of the other training that we provide for you will do you any good. You've got to know your enemy. There are powerful forces working in the back rooms, out of sight, in nearly every community in the nation, providing policy, money, and training to put all of this in place. That is what is known as non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. Nearly every program coming from your local city or county government has its own NGO behind it. They know how to put it together, how to promote it, how to sell it, how to get the money for it, how to write it up into legislation. There's one thing that's in common with all of these policies. None of them are local policies. They are all part of a national or international policy being brought into your community and sold as local. And this is the reason why once you have your what were once reasonable elected officials, people you may know, people you helped get elected, but all of a sudden they start taking actions that make no sense to you. Why did he do that? Where did this come from? Well, let me show you why that is and how this all works, what you're really up against. Now, you have on your city council or your county commission, you have maybe 5 members there. People, as I said, that maybe you helped elect to put on there. And what you look at when you see these is this is your government. And when you talk about government, that's who you're talking about. But the truth of the matter is, that's not your government anymore. It used to be, it's the way it was set up, they're elected to be your government, but there is much more behind them than what you're seeing. Let me just go through in a very quick way. And by the way, what I give you here, you can multiply it by 10 and still be short of what's facing you. But take a look at a whole bunch of non-governmental organizations that are right there embedded in your local government. First one up, Sierra Club, one of the largest, most powerful environmental organizations in the world. They help to write Agenda 21 at the UN level, and they are working day and night to bring it into almost every single community in this country, from the rural areas to the cities. and they have chapters, they have chapter members, and they're right there in the face of your city councilman and presenting them with policies, presenting them with ideas, and so forth. Another one is the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy is the largest land trust in the nation. Their policy, their shtick here, what they do, is that they grab land and they lock it away from use. It's interesting to note that the coastline of Virginia, a whole lot of that was grabbed up by the Nature Conservancy, and where you wouldn't be allowed to build on that land if you owned it, on the coastland and so forth, they're able to put whole communities together there and on that land that they have grabbed hold of. That's how the Nature Conservancy works. Someone said to me one time that they were nothing but a money laundering real estate firm, and that's about true. Another one is ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. ICLEI made it their mission after they helped write Agenda 21 at the UN level. They made it their mission to bring Agenda 21 into every community in the world. Now, just a few years ago, 650 American cities were paying them dues to bring in training, to put together seminars, to take every member of the employees at City Hall to come to the conclusion that all policies must be sustainable policies. That's what ICLEI does. Now, I will tell you, we can beat these people because we made some major inroads against ICLEI just a few years ago. We got more than 150 American cities to stop paying them dues, and we can do that again. We can continue to put that pressure on. The American Planning Association, the largest planning organization in the nation, and their mission is to pull all this together. They are working in every single community. You may have other planning groups with other names, but they're all part of the American Planning Association in one way or another. American Planning Association is a member of the plannersnetwork.org. You can see on their website their statement of principles. And here is what the American Planning Association and every planning organization in America believes. This is from their statement of principles on their website. You can look it up. It says, "We believe planning should be a tool for allocating resources and eliminating the great inequalities of wealth and power in our society because the free market has proven incapable of doing this." In other words, free enterprise doesn't work. Their planning is what we have to do. And one of the things they put together when we started to attack the American Planning Association was they put together a glossary for the public. And the opening line of this glossary for the public tells you everything you need to know about the American Planning Association. It says, given the heightened scrutiny of planners by some members of the public, what is said or not said is especially important in building support for planning. In other words, if they've got to lie to you, they will. That's the American Planning Association, and over these webinars, we're going to have a whole lot more about them because you stop the American Planning Association, we can stop sustainable development and the attacks on your local community. The other thing you end up with, in every community, there is a local environmental or land trust group. In my area in Virginia, it's called the Piedmont Environmental Council. They control the City Hall, they control City Council, and they control the County Commission. They make up the rules, and these elected officials dutifully follow them. You may find it's an animal rights group. You may find a group putting together heritage areas, things like that. But there's always several of these that are part of this whole cabal that we're talking about here. And as I said in the beginning, if you multiply everything I've given you by 10, you're still going to be short about how many of these organizations are probably there. You're probably going to have representatives from a local college, if you have one there in town, also promoting these same policies. You will have a regional council of government. This is a new tactic that they're putting together. There's a National Association of Regional Councils, and what they call, the reason they're putting this together, they say, is that they're meeting some local multi-jurisdictional challenges. And so they get representatives, maybe even elected officials, but also members of these NGO groups and so forth. They get on these regional councils, and they think they're pulling together jurisdictional challenges from a lot of different communities. But you end up with 10, 15, 20 counties in one of these regions, and what they begin to do is literally eliminate local control. Your city councilmen, your county commissioners suddenly are kowtowing to these regional councils, and the regional councils many times are the ones that are applying for the grant programs from the federal government, and your own community finds itself stuck having to comply to one of these even if they didn't ask for it. So regional councils of government. You're also going to find the National Education Association working in your community. This especially affects your local school boards, putting the same kind of policies in place in the curriculum. So all of these NGO organizations, all these working behind the scenes, are all promoting sustainable development, Agenda 21 policies, changing the very structure of your community, the structure of your elected officials, the attacks on private property and free enterprise, all of that. But you know what? That's not all. You also have several different organizations, national organizations. What's the first thing we do when we elected a new city councilman, a new mayor, a new county commissioner, somebody that you thought was a pretty good guy? First thing we do is send them off to national organizations, the U.S. Conference of Mayors for your mayor. Now, let me put this in place. The National Conference, or the U.S. Conference of Mayors, is not a government operation. They are a private 501c3 nonprofit organization. They have been supporting the international environmental policies and Agenda 21. They, for example, they made the UN's Kyoto Global Warming Treaty a centerpiece of its agenda, calling on cities to cut carbon footprints based on the treaty. They support the Kelo decision that destroyed private property rights in the Supreme Court. They promote smart growth and sustainable policies, and they established the Center for Sustainable Communities. And take a look right now as we watch the COVID-19 pandemic spread across the country and our cities being shut down and so forth. Who's leading that effort? The mayors, as they're allowing BLM and Antifa to destroy our cities, calling them peaceful demonstrations. The mayors, they're the ones behind that, allowing this to happen. Why? Well, they're all members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That ought to be a good clue. Another organization we send our elected officials to, the National League of Cities. Again, a 501c3 organization. They oppose any restrictions on state governments and any restrictions of them taking any private land. They support the Kelo decision that destroyed private property rights, and they promote smart growth and sustainable development policies. The National League of Cities will not allow anyone in one of their meetings to stand up and oppose these kinds of policies. Another one, the National Association of Counties. It's a 501c3 organization. It established the Center for Sustainable Communities. It provided the framework for Bill Clinton's President's Council on Sustainable Development, which we'll talk about in future webinars. The President's Council was designed to take what they call the suggestion of Agenda 21 and make it official U.S. policy. The National Association of Counties supported that. We also have the Council of State Governments, another 501c3 private organization, promotes worldwide sustainable zoning, provides model, uniform, and regulatory statutes for legislatures. In other words, sample legislation, they come in and start to promote it there. We have the National Conference of State Legislatures. Again, a 501c3 organization. It works to ensure federal programs are in state policy in a seamless, harmonized manner, creating the appearance that such policies are local rather than federal mandates. And finally, we have the National Governors Association. Again, a 501c3 private organization. They advocate smart growth, more government benefits for illegals. They work to back workfare requirements for welfare benefits. They try to block these workfare requirements for people to get their welfare benefits. And again, who has organized in near lockstep to shut down the states under COVID-19? The governors. This is where these ideas are coming from. This is how it's organized across the nation, that the exact same policies pop up wherever you go. People ask that question all the time. How does this happen? This is how it happens. And as I keep saying, they are 501c3 private organizations. Many, many people think the Conference of Mayors, the Governors Association, the National Association of Counties, and these other organizations are government organizations. They are not. And the only reason that these organizations have any influence in your community is because your elected officials give it to them. All of these NGOs I've mentioned, that is the truth. And we can get rid of them. We can get rid of their influence if we begin to elect people who will not give these people that influence, and we don't send our elected officials to their national meetings. The first thing that we do, as I said, is that we send them off to these meetings as soon as they get elected. And when they do get there, and they're hearing from the podiums of these organizations, the speeches, the talks that are coming out are literally these same NGO groups like the Nature Conservancy and the American Planning Association and so forth. And then they give them sample legislation to help put these policies in place. And then when your elected officials come home from these meetings, they're met by representatives of those same organizations, and they're saying, hey, did you get that sample legislation? Hey, we've got the whole thing right here in a box for you. We've got the money for you, too. They know how to get the grant money to implement it, and then they have the training for its implementation, all right there. And this is how policies that they are telling you are local policies, they are not. This is how they seep down into your city. Now, what are some of these samples, these policies that they're putting in place? Let me just give you a sample of them. One of them is one that's popped up recently, is called What Works Cities. Now, what they're saying to your elected officials is, this has been done in other cities around the country, and it's working there, and we can get it to work in your community too. And so they supply the communities with workshops, training, data, all the info to guide the city into the right programs. This eliminates the need for elected officials to even have to think. And under What Works City standards, the city becomes part of a national network of local governments. But you have to be prepared to be fully invaded by an army of NGOs to plan and enforce sustainable policies. That's What Works Cities. Another one, and you can see the effects of this one as you go around the country. It's called form-based codes. Form-based codes regulates land development to achieve a specific urban form. If you drive around the country, you start in Maine and you drive to Arizona. Now, in the old days, in New England had its own certain culture, its own specific look to it. And as you moved across the country, every region had its own specific look and character and so forth. And you get into Arizona and places like that, you had more of a desert look than the ocean kind of look that you would have in New England. All of a sudden, in all these different places, they're beginning to look exactly alike. The buildings look alike. They have the same look to them, the same structure, and so forth. This is form-based codes. It regulates the form, the scale, the character of the buildings, including floor ratios, dwelling units per acre, parking ratios. This is smart growth. This is all designed to control the way that we live. It enforces international building codes, including international electrical codes, international plumbing codes, and so forth. All one size fits all. All communities begin to look exactly alike. It's a scheme to, and they use this as a scheme to enforce energy and land use controls under sustainable guidelines. Another one you'll see in some cities, human rights cities. This refers explicitly to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, social justice that overrides the rule of law. There are some NGOs that are pushing these. Actually, right now, it's probably the center of everything that's being pushed for Black Lives Matter and Antifa. It says it properly addresses urban problems such as traffic congestion, racial discrimination, economic human rights, the rights of children, and affordable housing. In short, they create the perfect UN community or the perfect communist city. That's what human rights cities is all about. And all of these plans call for smart growth. Now, you're going to find more organizations, more of these kind of groups coming into every community. And one of them, the one I always say takes the walk of shame, is the National Association of Realtors. The National Association of Realtors is supposed to be the #1 organization in the world that represents or protects private property. That's what they sell, private property, homes, single-family homes. But instead, they are now pushing these smart growth programs, and just recently, as we announced, the Trump administration and Dr. Ben Carson at HUD have moved to eliminate a program called Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. We'll talk about this more in some future webinars, but they have moved to eliminate this over great opposition. And all of a sudden, we have now found out that the National Association of Realtors is going to begin to implement AFFH practices through the real estate industry. So they have totally become traitors to private property ownership and the very thing that is what's supposed to be their product as they move people into the stack and pack high rises of communities and out of single family homes. Now you may find some other organizations that are operating in this manner. The Chamber of Commerce in your community is beginning to push these very same programs. And there's also the American Farm Land Trust, which started as they sold themselves as people who were protecting farmland and trying to keep it in the hands of farmers. All of a sudden, they have switched to control of development rights, and they have begun to push these very same policies into place. And as I've mentioned, programs like What Works Cities, Form-Based Codes, Human Rights Cities, there are some other ones to watch for as you're doing research right there in your community. Look for programs like Complete Streets, Urban Growth Boundaries, Transportation Corridors. All of these are promoted by planning organizations and non-governmental organizations. They're all funded by federal grant money, and they're all designed to control property and reduce your personal transportation choices. So these are things to watch for. Now, as I've mentioned also, I mentioned a little earlier the Chamber of Commerce, the American Farm Land Trust, and of course the National Association of Realtors. All of these kinds of organizations, and there's more in your community, that are working for these policies, to put these things in place. They are not your friend. They are not promoting your businesses. They are not promoting your private property rights or your farm. And yet here they are, supposedly your representatives. Keep in mind, these are not government agencies or parts of the government. They are private entities. And if they're not representing you, then one of the things you can do is start new organizations to represent you, new organizations to represent your business interests, to present your cases in front of City Hall and your county commission, represent your farm interests. And certainly realtors, get rid of the National Association of Realtors. They are an absolute traitor to your cause. They are going to make it so you have absolutely nothing left to sell as they continue to promote these policies of sustainable development and so forth. So these are just some suggestions of some things you can begin to do in your own community as we teach you how to organize in future webinars. These are some goals to put together and to move forward with these things. And interestingly enough, as all of these things are being put in place for sustainable development, smart growth, Agenda 21 policies, now what are we seeing? We're seeing a whole new line being brought up about supposedly fighting the COVID-19 issue. All of a sudden we have new models, new committees, new organizations popping up. Supposedly they are local. And to bring this you up to date on this, I'm going to bring a gentleman in that I've been working with for several years, a very effective activist up in the state of Massachusetts, David Kopacz. And David, thank you so much for being with me on this is our first webinar, and the information you've been telling me I think fits exactly in with what I've been talking about here, and it brings it right up to date. So thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Tom. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Now you have, I know your activism, you've been a steady activist, effective activist in Massachusetts on a lot of these issues. You have some other titles and things that you do. You're in the county government, aren't you, in certain ways?
Yeah, in municipal government, I've served in several different capacities over the years as a health agent for several towns. I have a degree in the environmental sciences, so I've donated a lot of time, over 15 years, to conservation at the municipal level. So I've kind of seen what it is that comes at us organically from the population and their needs and environmental concerns, and I've also had a very good look at what comes at us kind of spoon-fed off the shelf from many agencies that are non-governmental, as you pointed out.
Yeah, that's so when you're talking about working on conservation issues and so forth, those you're looking at it, coming at it from a whole different way, I'm sure, than what you're seeing coming from the out of the government in the name of conservation. Isn't that a case?
Yeah, I was really dismayed a number of years ago, to use an example locally, is we had a land trust that was growing and getting bigger, very active in our community, and had come forward under the window dressing of wanting to save and preserve farms in perpetuity. Many times they would target like the widows of farmers, where the original farmer had passed away, the farm was starting to go into disrepair, and they come in and promise to allow them to keep doing what they're doing, but essentially buy out the development rights through these perpetual deed restrictions or conservation restrictions. They managed to convince our select board locally and even the town members at town meeting of what they were doing to endorse this. And of course, the pattern I noticed is they try to create a sense of emergency. The grant window's closing. We need these approvals quickly. Just, say you approve it and we'll fill in the details later. Well, I told my selectmen and the people in town, says, this is bad business sense here. You don't sign blank checks. And they're asking us to approve their effort and not see what the conservation restriction was. So I was, at that point, the only no vote. And lo and behold, when the actual draft of the conservation restriction came across my desk, as I was working for the conservation department at the time, this land trust had tried to ban tractors from a farm. And the more I looked and the more I pressed, I realized that this was not about environmentalism. And worse yet, and I also posed this to my locals, a good environmental program is going to be economically sustainable as well, to use some of their own terms of sustainability. So I asked them, and to this day, I've still not gotten them to do this, but I asked them, I said, let's do a full build out, just like you would do to someone who proposed a subdivision, for example. You know, what is the total burden? What is the tax burden? What is the cost to the town? I said, well, we got preservationists here who have gloated and bragged about all the property in town that they want to preserve. And of course, this property is owned by other people, of course. This is private property we're talking about. And I said, let's do a full build out. Let's take all those properties off the tax rolls and see if you can still provide the same amount of services on less money, or if you're going to have to hike taxes. Is it even economically sustainable? And I say it's not.
Now they take those properties right off the tax rolls, and somebody's got to make up for that, because they don't lower the cost of government once they do that, do they?
No. Sometimes it makes it worse, and we've seen this with the fires in the Midwest. Is they take this hands-off approach that they want to keep humans out of these areas. They get overgrown. Even the Native Americans called our forests, so we see horrible forest fires that burn through. And of course, those communities, in an attempt to prevent sprawl, have created zones where no more single-family homes are allowed. Well, these fires don't know those boundaries, burn right through them, and now you've got a lot of mad voters that thought they were doing the right thing that no longer can build a home where their old one burnt down.
Yeah, let's hope they get madder. Well, you were telling me what you were seeing now with under the excuse of COVID protections and so forth, that new organizations that or committees, whatever you want to call them, that look like they are local communities, but they really have their ties to these national NGO groups, even global NGO groups. That same old stuff, but it's more to watch for. What kind of things? First of all, Massachusetts, as you've told me, has literally gotten rid of their counties. Do I have that right?
Yeah, to a very large extent, and that's where I think every state's going to be a little bit different as far as how far down that path they've gone. But Massachusetts right now serves as a very good example of where many other states could end up in the near future if we get rid of county government in exchange for regional planning commissions, because they dominate the state of Massachusetts right now. So what we've got here is, I believe it's 8 of our counties have been completely dissolved. There's a few counties that kind of exist on paper out in the South Shore, East Coast, Boston area, but they're very much stripped of their authorities and duties. And it's important to remember this is a constitutional layer of government that existed. And back in the 90s, around the mid 90s, they decided that county government was very bloated, expensive, corrupt, all these things, and it probably was. But rather than taking the appropriate remedies, they advocated to just get rid of it altogether. And these same people were the ones that sprung forward and said, hey, you know what would be real cost effective if we could regionalize? Well, we had a regional form of government, and it was actual constitutional layer of government. Regional planning commissions are 501c3s. These are not government at all. Right. And they have become very, very overwhelming in the Commonwealth, to the point that we now have what I noticed is a parallel agency, committee, or association that exists for every municipal board or committee that exists. And it became very evident during the COVID-19. The Massachusetts Municipal Association, when our governor said, we want to hear from the municipalities how best to deal with COVID and how to reopen. And he said that in his press conference. And then later, what we found out he really meant is he was going to be getting an opinion from the Massachusetts Municipal Association, a nonprofit special interest group. Well, that's what we got right now, big 4-phase rollout from this corporation. In the background, never let a good crisis go to waste, they say. We now have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees sending draft resolutions very quietly to every school committee in, municipal school committee in the entire state, asking them to adopt a resolution stating that their town is systemically racist and seeks to incorporate basically the 10 demands of BLM. We have a Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. We have an association of conservation districts as they further regionalize. We really do have one for every board in town. The Mass Association of Planning Directors, the Agricultural Commission, the Assessor's officers, everything that we've got a legal, constitutional, municipal layer of in town has got a corresponding special interest group that spoon feeds whatever the agenda is. In this case, it's a lot of sustainability and green and walkable and social justice type things come in through these boards.
Now, did you say that there's some links, some websites and so forth that give some background to who these groups are and perhaps how they're funded and where their power is coming from?
Yeah, I would recommend, because you're probably going to have listeners from all over the country here, I hope, and they can look right in their own regional planning commission's website. And we've got one for every square inch of Massachusetts, and I'm sure they exist even in those states where you have county government and county structure. They run this in parallel. And once they disassemble the constitutional layer in the county, they're already there and functioning. So I know you can find it. And what I've done numerous times, and it begins to really build a very ominous picture, is when you go into their websites and you look at their partners. They really do just love to brag about that. And that's where you're going to see international organizations intermingling in their global to local effort to bring their policies directly into your town, going right around federal and state regulators. They come into your town. We vote them onto ourselves many times on our town hall floor. We turn these international policies into enforceable law right locally. So I'm all for the local understanding and local resistance to this, I think, is where the key is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what the point I wanted to get across with you and what you were telling me before, that these organizations, private organizations, these NGO organizations that are literally pretending to be government, and right there, arm in arm with the official government agencies, and putting all these policies in place. They train City Hall so they all think in the terms of these policies. They bring in the grant money. They put it all together right there in a nice, neat little blanket that they put over the entire community, and these regional things. So what they're doing is taking government further from the people, out of touch with them, and just exactly as you've described it. So great. That's exactly what I wanted to get across in this particular thing, because these NGOs are operating. They change their spots all the time, and when we reveal something, then they change, and they change their wording and so forth, and come back. Oh, this isn't that. This is new. This is all local, but none of it is it?
No, it's not. In fact, there was a couple of times the councils of government. I'm sure you're familiar with that apparatus. The councils of government are nothing but a council. It really is like a Soviet-style entity here, and they've come into our town wanting to get our town to partner with them and seek membership with them. And I did not have to do anything other than read their own documents and bring it up to the quorum of the voters. In one case, I mentioned that they have the right to basically take your property, eminent domain. And oh well, the director got up there and said, yeah, that's in there, but we don't plan to do that. And you could hear this groan across the whole crowd. I didn't have to say anything else. I sat down, and it was resoundingly rejected. People understand. Sometimes they don't know all the details, but boy, they see a trap set for them, and we don't have to fabricate or invent anything. We really just have to read into their own documents and be able to share it publicly. And common sense rules a day from there. People don't want to vanquish their property rights or their revenue potential. And that all goes out the window. Local control and local organic free market forces, when they're at play, your community is strong. There's no vacuum. Where there's a need, you'll find a business owner, an entrepreneur that will fill it. But in a planned society, using these regional planners in this dragnet of associations and special interest groups, what you want comes in already predefined for you. It's just how they can convince you that their bad idea is your good idea.
Absolutely. Well, this, I want to say to our listeners on this, as I said at the very beginning, the whole purpose of this particular opening webinar was you have to know who your enemy is. They are vast, they are organized, they are hidden, and this just gives you an idea of what you're up against when you're going to your city council, your county commission, and you see those 5 or 6, 7 elected officials up there, and you think, oh, that's our government. And now what we've learned through all this hour is what this enemy is, how vast they are, and who you're really up against, and why it's going to take a lot of effort to organize against them to be effective, to get them out of the way. But it can be done, and in our future webinars as we move forward, we are going to teach you details on exactly how to do that. But first you have to know who the enemy is, and then you learn how to fight them. So, Dave, I deeply appreciate your information on this, and it's right on target, and we're going to help people begin to stand up to this and fight back. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I think you really got a winner here. Is we're going to prevent a lot of this stuff from getting in locally, because that's where the action is. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, that's how it all happens, step by step. And that's why your elected officials don't seem to listen to your opposition. They are surrounded by these NGOs and these planners, and soon your elected officials begin to believe that this is the proper role of government. That's why we need to train and help you learn how to counter these forces and return our communities to local rule that you elect. Because so many people, as I said from the beginning, if you don't know your enemy, and that all of these are there, then just going down to talk to your city councilman or so forth is not going to change things. We have to expose them, we have to oppose them, and we have to stop them. That is what you will learn in our upcoming local activist training webinars. So stay tuned to that. Now, let me tell you about our exciting new local activist workbook and the toolkit to go with it, to help you have right there in your hands all of the information you need to know who these guys are and how to stand up to them.
Hi, this is Tom DeWeese from the American Policy Center, and I want to tell you about the full program that we are putting together as we put these webinars together. The webinars are the first part of what we are working on to help local activists become citizen ninjas, become powerful to fight on the local level, to stand up to things and these policies and your city councils and your county commissions, and effectively push back on the things that they're putting together. And we're putting together the series of webinars. And one of the things you can do with these webinars is keep them They'll be available on our website at americanpolicy.org. You can share them with others. You can watch them over and over again. You can use them as programs for organizations that you're already part of and begin a training process there. We've got to get a cadre of trained activists to stand up to the forces that we are up against. What we're facing, you can see by watching your television every night now, what we are up against in an opposition that is highly trained to absolutely destroy the Republic of the United States of America, your property rights, your ability to live your life as you choose. And what we are doing here is working to counter that effort that they are putting together, and begin to restore our liberties. And again, the webinars are the first part of that. And the second thing that we've done is we've put together this activist handbook to how to fight back on the local level. In fact, the webinars are basically designed to bring this to life. Let me just share with you some of the things that are in this manual. I don't think anybody has ever put together a more comprehensive tool for you to use in these cases. First of all, we've got a great deal of information in here about the real enemy that you're facing. The Green New Deal, the Agenda 21, sustainable development policies that are taking over every single community. And I know if you've been an activist, you've gone to try to talk to your city councilman and so forth, and they'll tell you, never heard of it, don't know what that is, tell me something about it, whatever. Well, we've got all the details here of why it's bad news. And one of the things we're focusing on in the manual is how to take the offensive for liberty, and how to create your community as a freedom pod, where you are in your community alone. You are fighting back to restore and protect private property, free enterprise, and your personal freedom of choice. Those are the American pillars of freedom that we've all enjoyed through the history of the United States that are now under attack. We're teaching you how to fight back with those things. Particularly, we're focusing on the local governments. Everybody wants to get involved in the presidential campaigns and work on with Congress or whatever, but we believe that the most effective thing you can do to fight back is start on the local level, and it will grow up to the state legislature and then on into Congress and so forth. But it rarely works the other way, and we focus on that in the manual. We're going to talk about some of the organizations, the NGO organizations that are in your communities and how they operate. The National Association of Realtors, and how they have absolutely betrayed the whole issue of property rights, which they ought to be the leading advocate for. The American Planning Association, and how they've taken over every single community in this country and putting in plans. They say free enterprise doesn't work, so they have to have their planning. That should give you a real hint as to what their planning is really about, but they call it smart growth. They're destroying private property ownership, and so forth. We're going to talk about how to take legislative action. And we have put together a package of 5 bills that are all designed to cut back on the size, cost, growth, reach of government that is particularly on private property rights. And we're going to teach you and legislators how to use these bills in legislators and start a movement across the country. We're going to go into great detail about that. Taking the offense to restore our liberty is what this is all about, and how to become a citizen ninja. We've got 8 rules for successful activists to follow, what those are, how to organize, how to research. We've got in here a city survey. If you take this document and fill it out, a city survey on your community, and you will find what kind of programs you have there, who's involved, what they are. Once you get this whole document filled out, you'll know everything you need to know about your city and how to begin to fight back. It's a very, very valuable tool, and it's in the manual. How to write effective letters to the editor, and how to use the media, not just newspapers and television and radio, but also social media, and how we need to use those things and organize. and get your message out. We have some tools in here that are extremely effective. And a lot of them are used to call out your elected officials. Do they stand for free enterprise, private property, and limited government, or are they promoting these massive government programs? We have some resolutions asking them to sign whether they do or not. And if they don't sign, you've got your answer. We've got a pledge for elected officials and candidates to sign. Guys running for office, and he says, "Oh yeah, I'm with you." Well, here's a resolution for him, a pledge for him to sign, saying that he supports private property rights. Now, if he signs it, wonderful. And if he starts to betray that when he gets into office, you've got that document in hand to say, "Hey, you know, what are you doing here? This is what you said you believed in when we elected you." These kind of things. We've got a whole lot of handouts that you can produce and hand out to people on various issues, conservation easements and other attacks on private property. And wherever it fits your need, we can have that there. And we can we have a section in the manual talking about how to take back the elective process, how to get into your precinct organization. And if you organized your own precinct, you could become a very powerful person in your community. Elected officials or candidates would come to you, say, "Help me." And you could say, "Where do you stand? What do you stand for?" That'll determine whether I help you or not. This is in the manual. One of the big things that I've been working on for the last year and a half is a means to make elected officials personally responsible for their own actions. How do you do that? There are some legal actions that can be taken. We now have a couple of them that one of them has to deal with the 14th Amendment. One of them has to deal with the Section 1983 of the Civil Rights Act. We're going to have webinars on this, and we're going to teach you, and it's in the manual as well, how to deal with these things. And then we have just a whole lot of documents. Do you know what the Wildlands Project is? We've got a document in here that'll tell you what it is. It's how they're taking rural land. Do you know what complete streets are? We've got a document in here that'll tell you what that is. And international building codes, controls on urban growth, the AFFH bill from HUD, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, which, by the way, the Trump administration has now said they're going to take away, but the National Association of Realtors says, well, we'll pick up the ball and take that instead. That, again, shows you their betrayal. National heritage areas and so forth. All of these are documents and much, much more in this manual that we have now put together, and it's all available for you on, I'll tell you what, the manual itself now is ready on Amazon and on our website at americanpolicy.org, and it is $49.99 to just buy it outright. However, a lot of these programs, a lot of these documents, a lot of the research documents that are just too big to put into this document, we now have those. We have on our website called a toolkit, and that toolkit has a lot of these documents. It has also where in the manual we do have some of these handouts that you can use, but it's kind of hard to get them out of the book, so you can download them from the website. And all of these kinds of documents and more, we're getting ready to put together some another section on the website where we can document the activists in different communities and actions they've taken successfully or not, sample legislation, all that sort of thing. And by the way, in here we have a kit of 5 bills that have been presented to us, provided for us by state legislator Matt Shea in Washington State, that all focus on limiting government and protecting private property. And those are downloadable on the toolkit on the website. So it's all in there together. And what we're asking with all of these details, about a year or 2 years ago, I put out a 5-point action plan of how to restore all this. The webinars are the first part of that action plan. The website is another part that as we're putting it together and as that is being developed. And we're working on, and again, putting these media sources together, as I mentioned, the radio shows, things like that. Those are all part of that action plan. Well, you know, it takes some funds to put all these things together. So what we're asking is, you can get the manual for just $49.99 on Amazon, or for a donation of at least $100, you can have access to everything, the manual itself and the toolkit, and all the updates that we give as they come along, and lots and lots of other information that will be coming down the pike as we do that. You will be part of the team. Just a donation, a one-time donation of $100, and you'll have access to all of that. So our goal is to restore the Republic of the United States of America and all the freedoms that we were guaranteed to be protected in our Constitution. That is our goal. We are up against a massive force, as you know, but we can beat them. And they are terrified that you're going to learn the information that we're providing here. And the last thing they want is for you to know this information. So get the information, become a powerful citizen ninja in your own community, how to organize, how to fight back, all the details, everything you need, all of it comes together. If you can see your way to give us a donation of at least $100 one time, then you will have access to all of it. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll join us, and let's take America back. Thank you.